The longship cut through the churning waves like a blade through flesh, its dragon-head prow rising and falling with each swell of the northern sea. Rorik Drengsson stood at the bow, his knuckles white against the wooden rail as he searched the distant shore for the telltale glow of settlements. His warriors waited behind him, their axes and swords gleaming in the pale moonlight, their breath forming clouds in the cold night air. "The gods favor us tonight," Bjorn Thorson said, coming to stand beside him. "Odin has hidden the moon behind clouds, and Thor holds back his thunder." Rorik nodded, his jaw set in grim determination. The settlement ahead belonged to the Myrling clan, the blood enemies of his people. For 3 generations, their families had been locked in a feud that had claimed dozens of lives, including his father's. Now, as the newly appointed Jarl of his clan, it fell to Rorik to continue the cycle of vengeance. "Remember," Rorik said, his voice low and hard, "we take what we need and burn the rest. The Myrlings deserve no mercy. They are without honor, without courage. They killed my father while he slept." The warriors behind him murmured their agreement, their blood already running hot with the promise of battle. Rorik had been only 12 when his father was found dead, his throat cut in the night. The tale of the Myrling assassin had been told to him so many times that he could see it in his dreams, a cowardly attack, dishonorable and shameful. "A Drengsson repays blood with blood," his uncle had told him as they laid his father in his ship burial. "Never forget that, boy. Never forgive." As the longship slid silently toward the shore, Rorik felt the familiar coldness settle in his chest, the hardening of his heart that came before a raid. The Myrlings were his enemies. They always would be. That was the way of things, ordained by the gods themselves. Fate had woven their hatred into the very fabric of their existence. The ship ground against the shingle beach, and Rorik was the first to leap into the shallow water, drawing his sword in one fluid motion. "For the Drengs," he called, and his warriors echoed the cry as they poured from the ship like wolves descending on a herd. The raid was swift and merciless. The small fishing village had few defenses, and those who stood to fight were quickly cut down. Rorik led his men through the settlement, claiming food, silver, and anything else of value. As they approached a cluster of huts at the edge of the village, Rorik spotted a figure darting between buildings. "There," he called, giving chase. The figure, a woman, ran toward the woods, a small bundle clutched to her chest. Rorik's long strides quickly closed the distance between them. He reached out and caught her arm, spinning her around to face him. In the dim light, he could see she was young, perhaps 20 summers, with eyes the color of a stormy sea. She didn't scream or beg for mercy as many did. Instead, she clutched the bundle, a child, he now realized, tighter to her chest and stared back at him with defiance. "Kill me if you must," she said in the tongue of his people, though her accent marked her as a Myrling, "but spare my brother's child. He is innocent of any blood feud." Rorik hesitated, his sword half raised. The woman's courage in the face of death stirred something in him, a reluctant respect. No Myrling should show such bravery. They were cowards, all of them. That's what he had been taught. "What is your name?" he demanded. "Dagny Myrlingsdottir," she replied, her chin lifting slightly. "And you are Rorik Drengsson. I recognize the bear claw around your neck. Your father wore it before you." The mention of his father should have kindled Rorik's rage, but instead, he found himself lowering his sword. "How do you speak our dialect so well?" "My mother was taken in a raid when she was young. She taught me your tongue in secret. She said knowledge was a weapon that could not be taken away." A shout from behind interrupted them. Bjorn approached, his axe dripping with blood. "Jarl Rorik. The village is ours. What would you have us do with the survivors?" Rorik looked at the woman, Dagny, and the child in her arms. For a reason he could not name, he could not bear the thought of her death. "This one and the child are mine by right of conquest," he declared. "They will return with us as thralls." Bjorn looked surprised but did not question his jarl. "As you wish. We'll finish here and be ready to sail with the tide." As Bjorn walked away, Dagny's eyes widened. "You're taking us as slaves? Would you prefer I leave you to die with the rest of your clan?" Rorik asked coldly. "There are fates worse than death," she replied, but there was resignation in her voice. "Not all thralls are treated cruelly in our lands," Rorik said, surprising himself with the defensive tone. "The child will be safe." Dagny studied his face for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then I will go willingly, for his sake." As Rorik led her back to the shore, he felt strangely unsettled. This was not how he had imagined his encounter with a Myrling would go. They were supposed to be cowering, dishonorable creatures, not proud women with steady gazes who protected children not their own. The thought troubled him as they boarded the ship and set sail for home, the village burning behind them. The journey back to the Drengsson settlement took 3 days, during which Dagny remained quiet but watchful. She cared for the infant, her nephew, Leif, with tender attention, singing soft lullabies when she thought no one was listening. Rorik found himself watching her more often than he cared to admit, puzzled by the contradiction she presented to everything he believed about her clan. On the evening of the 3rd day, as the longship approached the familiar shores of his homeland, Rorik sat beside her at the bow. "Tomorrow, we reach my settlement," he said. "You will be assigned duties by my sister, Astrid. She manages the household thralls." Dagny nodded, her eyes on the horizon. "What will happen to Leif?" "He will be raised in my household," Rorik said. "When he is old enough, he will learn a trade." "Not as a warrior?" Dagny asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. "He is a Myrling," Rorik replied simply. Dagny turned to face him fully. "And that is all that matters to you? The name he bears? Not the person he might become?" The question struck Rorik like a physical blow. Before he could formulate a response, the lookout called that they were approaching the harbor, and Rorik was needed at the helm. As they landed, the settlement came alive with people eager to welcome the raiders home and see what bounty they had brought. Rorik's sister, Astrid, stood waiting on the dock, her golden hair braided elaborately to signify her status as the Jarl's sister. "Brother," she greeted him, embracing him firmly. "Odin has favored your raid." "The gods were with us," Rorik agreed, then gestured to Dagny, who stood with the child, watching the busy harbor with wary eyes. "This is Dagny Myrlings' daughter. She and the child are to be household thralls." Astrid's eyebrows rose at the name. "A Myrling? In our home?" "She speaks our tongue and can be useful," Rorik said, more sharply than he intended. "The child is innocent of any blood feud." Astrid looked at her brother curiously but nodded. "As you wish. She will help with the weaving and the cooking." She approached Dagny and examined her as one might inspect a new horse. "You'll work hard, but you'll be fed well. And the child will not want for care." "Thank you," Dagny said simply, meeting Astrid's gaze directly. Later that evening, after the feast celebrating the successful raid, Rorik found himself on the bluff overlooking the sea. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like frost on a winter morning. "The stars are the same here," Dagny's voice came from behind him. "I used to think they would look different over enemy lands." Rorik turned to find her standing a few paces away, the sea breeze catching her dark hair. "You should not be wandering alone at night. Your sister sent me to bring you this." She held out a horn of mead. "She said you always forget to drink enough at your own feasts." Rorik accepted the horn with a nod of thanks. Astrid knows me too well." He took a long drink, then asked, "How are you finding your new home?" "It is not what I expected," Dagny admitted. "Your people speak of the Myrlings as if we are monsters in human form. Yet I find you eat the same food, tell the same kinds of stories, worship the same gods." "The Myrlings killed my father while he slept," Rorik said stiffly. "That is not the action of honorable people." Something flickered across Dagny's face, a shadow of some emotion Rorik couldn't identify. "And the Drengssons killed my father's entire family during a peace negotiation. Or so I was told." Rorik frowned. "That is a lie. My grandfather sought peace with the Myrlings. He went to the meeting unarmed, as was agreed, but your grandfather brought hidden weapons. 3 Drengssons died that day." "That is not the tale told among my people," Dagny said quietly. "How strange that the same event can be remembered so differently." The thought was unsettling. Rorik had never questioned the truth of his clan stories. They were the foundation of his understanding of the world, of his place in it, of his duty to continue the feud. "Truth is truth," he said finally. "It cannot be 2 things at once." "Can't it?" Dagny asked, looking up at the stars. "The moon is both light and dark. The sea is both provider and destroyer. Perhaps truth, too, has many faces." Before Rorik could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted them. One of his warriors, Gunnar, appeared at the edge of the bluff. "Jarl Rorik," he called, "the council awaits you in the great hall. There is news from the southern settlements." Rorik nodded. "I will come." He turned back to Dagny. "Return to the house. It is not safe for a Myrling to be seen alone, even as my thrall." Dagny bowed her head slightly. "As you command, Jarl Rorik." As she walked away, Rorik couldn't help but watch her go, troubled by her words and by his own unexpected reluctance to see her leave. The days stretched into weeks, and Dagny quickly proved herself valuable in the Drengsson household. Her weaving was exceptional, her cooking skillful, and she learned the rhythms of the settlement with surprising speed. The child, Leif, became a favorite among the women, who took turns holding him when Dagny was busy with other tasks. Rorik found himself seeking reasons to be in her presence, checking on stores in the weaving room, inspecting the kitchens, asking her opinion on a particular pattern for a new cloak. Each time, he told himself it was merely to ensure she was adjusting well, that his investment in her as a thrall was proving worthwhile. But in his heart, he knew there was more to it. One morning, as spring was beginning to warm the earth, Rorik found Dagny at the edge of the settlement, gathering plants in a small basket. "What are you collecting?" he asked, startling her. "Jarl Rorik," she said, straightening quickly. "I didn't hear you approach. These are herbs for healing. Your healer, Solvig, asked me to gather them. I learned their uses from my grandmother." "You know healing arts?" Rorik asked, surprised. "Some," Dagny admitted. "My grandmother was a Volva, a seer and healer. She taught me what she could before she died." Rorik studied her with new interest. "You never mentioned this skill." "You never asked what I could do," Dagny replied simply. "You only told me what I must do." The gentle rebuke was not lost on him. "What else do you know that I have not asked about?" A small smile touched Dagny's lips. "I can read the runes. I can navigate by the stars. I know the old stories, not just the ones told around fires, but the sacred ones, passed from Volva to apprentice." "You are full of surprises, Dagny Myrlingsdottir," Rorik said, finding himself returning her smile. "Most people are, if you take the time to see them," she replied. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of horns, a warning from the watchtowers. Rorik's body tensed instantly, his hand going to his sword. "Return to the main hall," he ordered Dagny. "Stay there until I come for you." He ran toward the sound, joining his warriors at the palisade wall. In the distance, a group of riders approached, their shields bearing the wolf emblem of the Myrling clan. "Myrlings," Bjorn spat. "What business do they have here?" "We will soon find out," Rorik said grimly. "Open the gates, but keep archers ready. If this is a trick, they will die where they stand." The riders, 5 men led by a tall, broad-shouldered warrior, entered the settlement slowly, their hands visible and away from their weapons. The leader dismounted and approached Rorik with measured steps. "I am Hakon Myrlingson," he announced. "I come under the protection of truce to speak with Jarl Rorik Drengsson." Rorik recognized the name. Hakon was the new Jarl of the Myrling clan, having taken leadership after the death of the previous Jarl in the winter. "Speak your piece, Myrling," Rorik said coldly. "A fishing village under our protection was raided 2 moons ago," Hakon said, his voice equally cold. "Among those taken was my cousin, Dagny Myrlingsdottir, and my son, Leif." Murmurs rippled through the gathered Drengsons. Rorik kept his face impassive, though inwardly he was reeling. The child was not Dagny's nephew but the son of the Myrling Jarl himself. "What makes you think they are here?" Rorik asked. "Survivors saw a ship with a red dragon prow." "Your ship," Hakon replied. "I do not come seeking vengeance today, though the gods know I have cause. I come to offer a trade. The return of my family for this." He gestured to one of his men, who brought forward a small chest. Opening it, he revealed a gleaming sword, its hilt wrapped in leather and set with amber. "This is Dragonbiter, the sword of your grandfather," Hakon said. "It was taken during the battle at Redstone Beach. I offer it in exchange for my family." Rorik stared at the sword, recognizing it from the stories told around the hearth. It was a legendary weapon, said to have been blessed by Odin himself. Its loss had been a blow to the honor of the Drengsson clan. "Why would you return such a prize?" Rorik asked suspiciously. "Because family is worth more than steel, no matter how fine," Hakon replied simply. "I would trade all the swords in Midgard for the safety of my son." The word struck Rorik like a physical blow. This man, this supposed enemy without honor, was willing to return a priceless heirloom for the safety of his family. It contradicted everything Rorik had been taught about the Myrlings. "Wait here," Rorik said abruptly. He turned and strode toward the main hall, his mind racing. Inside, he found Dagny sitting with the child, her face pale but composed. She looked up as he entered, and he could see in her eyes that she already knew who had come. "You lied to me," Rorik said. "The child is not your nephew but the son of Jarl Hakon." "I did not lie," Dagny replied steadily. "I said he was my brother's child, which is true. Hakon is my brother, though we share only a father." "And you did not think this was important to mention?" Rorik demanded. "Would it have mattered?" Dagny asked. "Would you have treated him differently knowing he was the son of the Myrling Jarl? Would you have used him as a pawn in your blood feud?" The question hung in the air between them. Rorik wanted to deny it, but he could not be sure what he might have done had he known the truth from the beginning. "Your brother is here," he said finally. "He offers Dragonbiter, my grandfather's sword, in exchange for you and the child." Dagny's eyes widened. "Dragonbiter? But it is the most prized possession of the Myrling clan. My father would never allow." She stopped, realization dawning. "My father is dead, isn't he?" Rorik nodded. "Hakon leads your clan now." Tears filled Dagny's eyes, but she blinked them back. Then I should go to him, she said, rising with the child in her arms. Wait, Rorik said, surprising himself. The thought of her leaving suddenly filled him with an unexpected ache. I need to consider this offer carefully. What is there to consider? Dagny asked. You receive a priceless heirloom, and we return to our people. It is a fair exchange. Rorik couldn't explain the reluctance he felt, not even to himself. Over the weeks, Dagny had become more than a thrall in his household. She had become, what? A friend? Something more? The thought was dangerous, forbidden. I must consult with the council, he said finally. Wait here. The council meeting was heated. Some argued that they should accept the sword and be rid of the Myrlings in their midst. Others suggested they keep both the sword and the hostages, using them as leverage in future negotiations. A few even proposed killing Hakon and his men while they were inside the settlement, dealing a devastating blow to the Myrling clan. Rorik listened to all sides, his thoughts in turmoil. When all had spoken, he rose to his feet. I will accept the exchange, he declared. The sword for the woman and child. But I propose more. I will meet with Jarl Hakon alone, away from our warriors, to discuss the possibility of a truce between our clans. The council erupted in protests. Bjorn stood, his face flushed with anger. A truce? With the Myrlings? Have you forgotten what they did to your father? I have forgotten nothing, Rorik said firmly. But I begin to wonder if what I remember is the whole truth. This blood feud has claimed too many lives on both sides. Perhaps it is time to consider another way. His words were met with stunned silence. Then, one by one, the council members nodded their reluctant agreement. Rorik was their Jarl, the decision was ultimately his to make. When Rorik returned to the hall, Dagny was waiting, her face composed but her eyes anxious. What have you decided? She asked. You will go with your brother, Rorik said, feeling the words like stones in his chest. But I have also proposed a meeting between myself and Jarl Hakon to discuss a possible truce. Hope and disbelief mingled in Dagny's expression. A truce? After all these generations? It may come to nothing, Rorik cautioned. But I find myself questioning things I once took as certainties. Dagny stepped closer to him, the child sleeping in her arms. It takes great courage to question one's own beliefs, she said softly. Greater courage even than facing an enemy in battle. Before Rorik could respond, she leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing us as people, not just as Myrlings. The exchange took place at midday. Hakon presented the sword with formal dignity, and Rorik accepted it with equal ceremony. Then Dagny, carrying Leif, walked across the space between the two groups to join her brother. Rorik watched her go, feeling as though something essential was being torn from him. We will meet at the sacred grove in 3 days' time, Rorik called to Hakon. You and I alone, unarmed, to speak of peace. Hakon studied him for a long moment, then nodded. 3 days. At dawn. As the Myrlings rode away, Dagny looked back once, her eyes finding Rorik's across the distance. Then she was gone, leaving Rorik with a sword in his hands and an emptiness in his chest that no blade could fill. The 3 days passed slowly. Rorik spent much of it in preparation, consulting with the elders, making offerings to the gods for guidance. On the eve of the meeting, he sat alone in his chambers, turning Dragonbiter over in his hands, studying the intricate patterns worked into the steel. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Astrid entered, carrying a cup of mead. You should rest, brother, she said, setting the cup beside him. Tomorrow may change the course of our clan's future. Rorik nodded absently, his eyes still on the sword. Do you think I'm making a mistake, sister? Astrid sat beside him, her expression thoughtful. When the Myrling woman first came here, I thought you had lost your mind, bringing an enemy into our home. But I watched her these past weeks. I saw how she cared for the child, how she worked without complaint, how she treated everyone with respect despite her position. She made me question what I thought I knew about the Myrlings. As she did me, Rorik admitted. And now you miss her, Astrid said, not a question but a statement. Rorik looked up, startled by his sister's perception. Is it so obvious? Only to me, Astrid assured him with a small smile. But I know your heart, brother. It has been closed since father died. Now I see it opening again, and I am glad for it, even if the cause would shock our ancestors. What would father say, I wonder? Rorik mused. Father wanted peace for our people above all else, Astrid replied. Remember how he spoke of the toll of endless vengeance? How each death demanded another, and another, until the reason for the first killing was long forgotten. Rorik did remember, though those words had been overshadowed by the grief and rage that followed his father's death. He had been so certain of the righteousness of their cause, of the dishonor of their enemies. Now, nothing seemed certain any more. Get some rest, Astrid said, rising. Whatever happens tomorrow, you will need a clear head and a strong heart. Dawn broke clear and cold on the day of the meeting. Rorik rode alone to the sacred grove, an ancient stand of oak trees that had stood since before the time of his grandfather's grandfather. It was neutral ground, sacred to both clans, a place where the veil between worlds was said to be thin. Hakon was already there when Rorik arrived, standing beside a massive oak, his cloak pulled tight against the morning chill. The two men regarded each other warily. You came alone, Rorik observed. As did you, Hakon replied. Perhaps we are both fools, or perhaps the gods have brought us to this moment for a purpose. Perhaps, Rorik agreed. He dismounted and approached, stopping a few paces from the Myrling Jarl. Before we speak of a truce, I would know the truth of something. My father was killed in his sleep, a knife across his throat. Your clan was blamed. Is this the truth as you know it? Hakon's expression hardened. It is not. My father always denied responsibility for that death. He believed it was done by someone within your own clan, someone who sought to prevent the peace your father was beginning to favor. The word struck Rorik like a physical blow. Who would do such a thing among my own people? Who benefited most from your father's death? Who has always been the strongest voice against peace between our clans? Hakon asked. An image of his uncle, Eivor, flashed in Rorik's mind, Eivor, who had taken control of the clan until Rorik came of age, who had always counseled the harshest measures against the Myrlings, who had been the one to tell him of his father's death. This is a grave accusation, Rorik said, his voice hoarse. It is, Hakon agreed. And I have no proof to offer you, only the word of my father, who went to his grave maintaining his innocence. Rorik was silent for a long moment, his mind racing with the implications. If what Hakon said was true, then the entire foundation of his hatred for the Myrling clan was built on a lie. Why would you seek peace now? Rorik asked finally. After all the blood that has been spilled between our families. For the same reason you agreed to this meeting, Hakon replied. Because of Dagny. Rorik looked up sharply. My sister sees things others do not, Hakon continued. When she returned, she told me of her time in your household. She spoke of a man different from the monster our stories painted, a man capable of mercy, of questioning, of change. She believed peace was possible, and I trust her judgment more than any others. She spoke of me. Rorik asked, unable to keep the eagerness from his voice. A knowing look crossed Hakon's face. She did. At great length. He paused, then added, she also told me that if I harmed you at this meeting, she would never forgive me. Despite the tension of the moment, Rorik found himself smiling. It sounded like Dagny. So what do we do now? Rorik asked. How do we end generations of hatred? We begin with truth, Hakon said. We gather our elders, our runecarvers, our skalds, and we compare the stories. We find where they diverge and seek the reason why. And then we make new stories, stories of peace rather than vengeance. It will not be easy, Rorik warned. There are those in my clan who will resist. As there are in mine, Hakon agreed. But we are the Jarls. If we stand together, others will follow. Eventually. Rorik considered the man before him not the faceless enemy of his imagination but a leader trying to do what was best for his people, just as Rorik was. For the first time, he saw not a Myrling but simply a man. I propose a more immediate bond between our clans, Rorik said suddenly. A marriage alliance. Hakon raised his eyebrows. Between which members of our families? Rorik took a deep breath. Between myself and your sister, Dagny. If she is willing. For a moment, Hakon looked stunned. Then he threw back his head and laughed. By Odin's eye. When Dagny told me she thought you had feelings for her, I thought it was wishful thinking on her part. She said that? Rorik asked, hope flaring in his chest. Not in so many words, Hakon replied, still grinning. But a brother knows these things. His expression grew more serious. You understand what you're proposing? The Jarl of the Drengssons married to a Myrling woman? It would change everything. That is my hope, Rorik said. Our clans have been divided long enough. Let this marriage be the beginning of a new story. Hakon studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I will speak to Dagny. If she consents, and I suspect she will, then we will announce the betrothal at the next thing, before all the clans. Let everyone witness this new beginning. The two men clasped arms, sealing their agreement in the ancient way of their people. As they parted, each to return to their settlements with news of the proposed peace, Rorik felt lighter than he had in years, as though a burden he had carried since childhood had finally been lifted from his shoulders. The announcement of the betrothal at the thing sent shockwaves through both clans. As expected, there were those who opposed it violently. Rorik's uncle, Ivar, denounced it as a betrayal of everything the Drengsson stood for. When that failed to sway the majority, he attempted to challenge Rorik's right to lead, demanding a holmgang, a duel of honor. On the day of the holmgang, as Rorik prepared to face his uncle, Dagny came to him. She wore a blue dress that matched her eyes, her dark hair braided with silver threads. You don't have to do this, she said, her hands clasping his. We could leave, start anew elsewhere. And abandon my clan? Leave them under Ivar's leadership? Rorik shook his head. I cannot. Besides, there is something I must know. Dagny's eyes widened with understanding. You think he killed your father? I think he is the only one who knows the truth, Rorik replied. And today, I will have that truth from him, one way or another. The holmgang took place on a small island in the middle of the river that divided their territories, with members of both clans gathered to witness. Rorik and Ivar stood on opposite ends of a hide stretched over the ground, each armed with shield and sword. It's not too late to reconsider this madness, nephew, Ivar called. Renounce the Myrling woman, and I will withdraw my challenge. I will never renounce her, Rorik replied steadily. But before we begin, tell me this, did you kill my father? A ripple of shock went through the crowd. Ivar's face contorted with rage. "How dare you?" he shouted. "I loved my brother." "Did you love him enough to let him make peace with our enemies?" Rorik pressed. "Or did you decide that peace was a greater betrayal than murder?" With a roar of fury, Ivar charged, his shield before him and his sword raised high. Rorik met the attack squarely, his own shield absorbing the blow while he countered with a swift strike that Ivar barely avoided. They circled each other on the hide, exchanging blows, testing defenses. Ivar was older but still powerful, his rage lending him strength. Rorik fought with calculated precision, watching for an opening. "You always were weak," Ivar spat as they locked shields. "Like your father before you. He would have surrendered everything we fought for, all for the sake of peace." "Peace is not weakness," Rorik replied, pushing back. "It takes more strength to end a feud than to continue one." "Pretty words," Ivar sneered. "But they won't save you when I cut you down, just as I did your father when he betrayed our clan's honor." The admission, made in the heat of battle, silenced the crowd. In that moment of shock, Rorik saw his opening. With a swift, decisive move, he knocked aside Ivar's shield and pressed his sword to his uncle's throat. "Say it again," Rorik demanded, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. "Say it so all can hear." Ivar's face twisted with hatred, but with the cold steel against his skin, he had no choice. "I killed him," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "He was going to make peace with the Myrlings. He was going to dishonor all our dead with his weakness. I did what was necessary to preserve our clan's honor." "Honor?" Rorik echoed incredulously. "There is no honor in killing your own brother as he slept. There is no honor in perpetuating a feud built on lies. The true betrayal was yours, uncle." With a deliberate motion, Rorik lowered his sword. "I will not kill you," he declared. "But you are banished from our lands forever. If you return, your life is forfeit." As Ivar was led away, his face a mask of thwarted rage, Rorik turned to the gathered crowd. "For too long, our clans have been divided by hatred and vengeance. Today, we learned that the very foundation of that hatred was built on a lie. My father sought peace, as I do now. In his memory, and for the future of both our clans, I ask you to set aside the old feuds and embrace a new beginning." He extended his hand to Hakon, who stepped forward to clasp it firmly. "Our clans will be united by marriage," Hakon announced, "but let them also be united in purpose. Together, we will be stronger than either clan alone." One by one, members of both clans came forward to pledge their support for the union. Some still looked doubtful, others openly hostile, but the majority seemed relieved that the endless cycle of vengeance might finally be broken. That evening, as the celebrations began in earnest, Rorik found Dagny standing at the edge of the firelight, watching the dancing with a small smile. "Are you happy?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied, turning to face him. "When I was taken in the raid, I thought my life was ending. Instead, it was just beginning. When I took you from that village, I thought I was capturing an enemy," Rorik said. "Instead, I found the woman who would change everything I believed about the world." "Not everything, I hope," Dagny teased. "You're still a stubborn, proud Viking warrior. And you're still a fierce, outspoken shield maiden at heart," Rorik returned with a smile. "Some things don't need to change." Dagny laughed, the sound carrying over the music and the crackling fire. "No, they don't." Her expression grew more serious. "What happens now?" "Now," Rorik said, taking her hands in his, "we write a new saga together. One of peace instead of war, of unity instead of division." "It won't be easy," Dagny warned. Old hatreds don't disappear overnight. Nothing worth having comes easily, Rorik replied. But we have something our ancestors lacked. What's that? Dagny asked. The courage to question what we've been taught, Rorik said. And the wisdom to choose love over hatred. As the midsummer sun set on the two clans celebrating together for the first time in generations, Rorik and Dagny sealed their betrothal with a kiss that promised not just a union between two people, but a new future for all their people. In that moment, fate itself seemed rewritten, the old patterns broken, a new destiny forged through the unlikely love of a Viking prince and a common girl who dared to see beyond the boundaries of clan and blood. The wedding took place at the autumn equinox, when day and night stand equal, a fitting symbol for the balance they hoped to achieve between their clans. Under a canopy of golden leaves, with the gods as their witnesses, Rorik and Dagny exchanged swords and rings, binding their lives together in the ancient way of their people. As the skald sang of this new beginning, weaving the first verses of what would become a new saga for generations to come, Rorik looked at his bride and saw in her eyes the reflection of a future brighter than any he could have imagined, a future built not on the foundations of hatred and vengeance, but on the stronger, more enduring foundation of love and understanding. And so it came to pass that a blood feud centuries old was ended not by the sword but by the heart, proving that even the most ancient of hatreds can be overcome when one has the courage to question what has always been believed, and to choose a different path.